Okay, tonight we're at chapter 4 and verse 11. So let's get right to the situation here that he is talking about as we continue the study here in practical Christianity. Now here he's going to be continuing on, and he's going to be talking more about the use of the tongue. He's talked about this before, and once again, he's going to be dealing with this. Now, what he's going to be telling us is that with our tongue, we need to learn not to speak certain things. Now, let's stop and think for just a moment. When the Bible says, don't do this or don't do that, there's always a reason for it. And it's not just because it's bad, that's a reason for it. But he tells us not to do this because this is a weakness of mankind. This is what we normally do. These things. Now, stop to think when you raising your children, why did you tell them, now, don't you do a certain thing? In other words, you can go to Johnny's party, but don't you, and then you tell them some things, don't you? Now, you don't tell them 500 different things not to do, but you do say, don't you. Now, we can ask Denise, when you told your kids, don't do, and you picked out one or two things, why did you pick out those one or two things?
They were pertinent to whatever.
Okay, because she knows that that's pertinent, and those are things that her kids will probably do if they're not reminded of it. Now, that's what we're in right now. Now, here's something we're not to do. And he's warning us this because it's something that mankind is very free with. So he said, speak not one against another, brethren. He that speaketh against a brother. Now, might stop right there. Have you ever done that, or have you ever been in a conversation where somebody is talking about another Christian? Think about that. And you say, well, yeah, it happens all the time. Sure. Yeah, here. All right, then let me take one step farther. In these conversations where one Christian is talking about another Christian, is it always good? Is that what you hear? Is it always good? Hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Now then, do you expect it to hear something good, or is it something bad? So now here's what he's saying. Don't get involved in speaking against a brother or judging his brother. Now, if you do, he that speaketh against his brother or judges his brother, speaketh against the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judgest the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. So he said, now here is the significance of this. Here is what makes it so bad. And that is that whenever you speak against someone or judging someone, and that's what you're doing when you're speaking against someone and telling how bad they are, these people are like this, they're like that, how bad they are, you're judging them. Now he said, when you do that, you have elevated yourself out of the realm of being a Christian. And you've elevated yourself up into the realm of being a judge. You now are going to move into the realm that belongs only to God. Now he said, when you do this and you become this judge and you speaking evil of these people, all of a sudden you cease being a doer of the law and you become a judge. Now, stop to think just a minute. Does James really mean you cease being a doer and you become a judge? Does he really mean that? That you're no longer a doer of the law, but now you are a judge of the law? Or is he trying to hit us with the fact that when you do this, now then you have, by your action, you are saying, I'm elevating myself up now, I'm not the doer, but I am a judge. Now, I know that if anybody walked in here and asked us, or anyone else, take any Christian you want to ask, and ask them, are you a doer of the law or are you a judge of the law? What would we say 100% of the time? See? And if somebody said, oh no, I'm a judge. Yeah, I have the right to judge my brother. We would think that that is the dumbest thing that could possibly be said. It would be saying, no, I'm going to take the place of God. I have all of that wisdom and so forth. But he said, in essence, that's what we're doing. We're taking the place of God when we do that. Now then, he says, keep this in mind. Only one is the lawgiver and the judge. There's no room for anybody else to sit in that seat. There's no room for any Christian to move out of being a doer and become a judge because there's only one judgment seat. And that judgment seat belongs to one, even he who is able to save and to destroy. That's who that belongs to. It only belongs to the one who is able. Now that word, who is able, comes from the word dynamite, power. The one who has the dynamite, the one who has the power, the one who has the strength to save or destroy. So that judgment only belongs to that individual. So if I'm judging my brother, I would have to have the power to save that brother, or if I judge him not worthy, to destroy that brother. And if I don't have that power to save or to destroy, and yet I am making those statements, think what I have done. I have invaded the realm of God, and I have absolutely no power to carry it out whatsoever. So I said, don't do this. So then he asked this rhetorical question, which is a question that is stated to try to embarrass us. But who are you that judgest your neighbor? Who do you think you are? I suppose we've all had, especially our moms, to tell us that. Maybe a lot of other people to tell us that. Who do you think you are? But as we grow up, our moms have said it. Who do you think you are? Now, it was said to try to grab the child's attention. Even a child can understand that. Oh, wow. I just got through saying something where I'm taking dad's position, or I'm taking mom's position, and so we hit them with that statement. It's a rhetorical statement to grab us and to let us know how silly and dumb we really are. So what he does then is give us this warning. And it's a warning that as we look at our own tongues, we need to ask, how often do we violate this particular command? All right. Then he now is going to tell us some judgments here about judgment that should make us cringe. Now, these are other passages I want to get, but I'm just putting them up here. And it might make us cringe just a little bit as we look at it in here. All right, now, judge not, for with what judge not that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, and with what measure you mete, it shall be measured to you. Now, how do you judge other people? With what measurement do you use? How much leniency do you give them? How much freedom do you give them? That's what's going to happen to us on the judgment day. Now, think about it in this way. And this is the reason I say it makes us cringe. When we get to the judgment day and we stand before the Almighty God, all of us have thought about this hour, this moment, and we stand there. And we think, boy, I hope I can stand there and I'm not guilty of murder. I'm not guilty of adultery. I'm not guilty of... And so we think of all the big things we're not guilty of. What about judging people? What about when we talk about people? And what about the standard we use? That's what God is going to give us. He said, you remember how you judged these people back there? You remember how harsh and strict you were? That's how you're going to be judged. Now that's scary. That is really scary. Jesus tells them in here, in the prayer as you pray to God. And forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Can we pray to God in that way? Lord, please forgive me of my sins. And I want you to forgive me, just like I have forgiven all of my brethren. Yeah, use that same standard, Lord, and forgive me just like I've forgiven them. Now, there may be some people that might pop in your mind and you say, maybe I don't want to pray that. Lord, don't forgive me like I've forgiven my brethren, but forgive me with a little more leniency, see? But he said, no, pray as we forgive our brethren. So if we forgive our brethren our debts, and bring us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, for if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will forgive you. If you forgive not men their trespasses, neither will your heavenly Father forgive you. Pretty big standard. Probably something there that's a little more important than murder or adultery. Think about it. Could well be. James 2, for judgment is without mercy to him that showed no judgment. Mercy glorieth against judgment. So how merciful are we and compassionate are we when we have problems with our brethren? Now, we do have to look at people and we do have to make judgments, but it's by their fruits ye shall know them. And as you see it, here's what they did, but why did they do it? What was in their heart? Did they know they were doing it? What about all those things that are not ours to judge? Okay? That are not ours to judge. Think about that. Think about it really, really seriously that's in there. I say something real ugly to Charlene, and it hurts her feelings, and she comes to me and says, Lowell, the other night you said, did. And I said, oh, man, did I say that? Yeah, you said that. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't, that's not what was in my heart. That's not what I meant to say. Oh, yes, it was. No, I didn't, I really didn't mean it. Oh, yes, you did. That is exactly what you said. Okay? That's what this is talking about right here. Now then, I've sinned against her, but now then she's become, taking the place of God and judging me about things she has no power to know. See? Whether I did it on purpose or whether I didn't do it on purpose, that is in there. Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Only the facts of the case. So this is important. So James puts it in. Practical Christianity. That mouth, watch that. Now, some more things about the tongue. He said, come now ye that say. Now, come now ye is a statement that means all of us understand. Come, tut, come on now. In other words, showing the folly of it. Now, ye that say, now then we're going to look at some things that these people say that is right here. And this is found now in verse 13. Come now ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into the city and spend a year there and trade and get gain, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. What is your life? For ye are a vapor that appeareth a little while, a time, and then vanisheth away. For that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we will both live and do this or that. But now you're glorying in your vauntings. All such glorying is evil. So now, look at these people here. They made some plans. Here's some people that made some plans. And they have planned and they say, now here's the time of when I'm going to leave. So I'm getting ready to leave, and I'm going to leave today or tomorrow. So I tell you exactly when I'm going to do it. And I tell you where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to a certain city. And then I tell you how long I'm going to be there. I'm going to go to the city. I'm going to Dallas, and I'll be there for 1 year. Now, when I get to Dallas, I'm going to enter into some business, and the business is going to be trading. I'm going to trade down there in Dallas. And I will be successful. I'm going to get some great gain. I'm going to do all these things. How many of these things do I not have control over? Now, all of these things I plan, and all of these things I want to do, but how many of them am I sure that I'm going to do? I'm stating this is what I am going to do. Now, I'm stating a lot of things that I don't know. Isn't that right? A whole lot of things that I don't know. Will I make it to Dallas? I don't know. I plan on going. I hope I can. Well, will I even be able to leave tomorrow? Well, I hope so. You know, I don't have any control really over any of these. These are just plans that I have here. Now, what he's telling us is, here are all the things that you have determined that you're going to do. See, that is in here. So now, he starts telling them then, in here, how foolish that is. He said, what is your life? So stop to think about it. Here it is, I've talked and I've told you what I'm going to do. So he said, now stop and think, really, what is your life? Here's some passage in the Bible that very sobering. James says, for it's but a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanisheth away. We've all seen the vapor come out of the tea kettle. And how long does it last? You can see it and then it just disappears. David explained it. He said, you have made my days as handbreadths and my age as nothing before you. David said, you've made my days as how long? That long. That long. Now, if you went in to buy, you're going to town, you're going to buy a curtain, or you're going to buy a tabletop of some kind. You're going to buy something to go over this. How long is it? Well, here it is. It's 6 inches and 6 inches and 6 inches. By the way, how long would you put that? See? He said, you've made my life as handbreadths. Just my life is, and there it is. See? Then he goes ahead and he says, and my age is as nothing before you. We look at people that have many, many years behind them, and we talk about, boy, they've seen a lot of things and done this. Well, David says, my age is as nothing before you. I think it's really interesting that all surveys tell this, and they generally will tell you when, at various times, they survey old people, and it doesn't make any difference how old they are. When you survey old people, by the way, how old is an old person? Somebody once said, and hit it right on the head, it's 10 years older than you are. That's what it is. And I can see that. When I get to be 87, I will be an old person. See? But certainly I'm not now. Now, and you think about yours, and you'll find that really is what the thing is that is in here. But now then, it's just as nothing before you. You survey the old people, and they found there's one thing that's consistent. When they ask, you've lived your life now, you come down to the end, maybe 100 years old, maybe 75. What is the thing that has surprised you the most? And every time, how fast life has gone. That's what it is. I just can't believe how fast it's going. Why, just like yesterday that I was having my children. Just like yesterday that I was. See? Now, this is what David's talking about, and it's true. Then once again he says that my days are like a shadow that lengthens. You ever seen a shadow? You sat out in the summertime, you see this shadow, It just keeps lengthening and lengthening just a little bit and getting a little bit longer because the sun's going down. And what happens to that shadow? In just a little while, it's gone. And he said, and I wither away like grass. So I just wither. That's what life is about. There's no strength to it. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle. I guess today we would say than a needle on a sewing machine. That you look at those days and bing, 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 and when it's all over, that's how fast life has gone that's there. My life is a breath, trying to show us how short it is. How long is life? That's how long life is. It's as a cloud is consumed and vanisheth away. You look at a cloud and put your eyes on one cloud and you watch it, and just a little while it just disappears. It's up there. Isaiah said, my dwelling is removed and is carried away from me as a shepherd's tent. So I said, it's my dwelling, my house, the body, my life here on earth. It just moved like a shepherd's tent. We come in, and shepherd comes in, sets up his tent. Next day he moves his tent. That's the way we are. We show up on earth, we set up our life, and it's moved, and we're gone. It's no more permanent than a shepherd's tent. So that's what James is saying. Now he's saying, here again is an attitude that we need to have, practically speaking, if we're going to think the way God would have us to think. And that is, we are not in control of our life. So now then he goes ahead and he says, for that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall both live and do this or that. So now, it's perfectly okay to make your plans. I'm getting ready to leave tomorrow for Dallas, and I'm going to go into a certain business, and I plan on making some money. I'm going to stay there for a year, and then I'll come back. Now, perfectly permissible to make plans. But as I'm making those plans, what had my attitude ought to be? If the Lord wills, this is what I plan on doing. But I understand it really is in the hands of God. Now, this is not a statement that we need to say after every statement we make. You say, Lowell, what are you going to do tomorrow? Oh, I'm going to run over to Snohomish and buy a screw, and I'm going to do this or that. And I don't have to say, well, I'm going to do this if the Lord wills, I'm going to do this if the Lord wills. Perfectly permissible to say that, and it's good to say it once in a while to keep our minds sharp and understand this. But this is an attitude. This is a disposition that we need to have. And we need to understand, excuse me, whatever my plans are tomorrow, how sure are they of being carried out? How many people today got out of bed and they planned on coming home and having dinner tonight, and they died? They died on the highway. They died with a heart attack. They died in various ways. Maybe they didn't die. Their automobile. They're in a hospital. They'll go to a nursing home. They'll never make it home. How many people? Thousands of them. Thousands of people every day. And so we need to understand that whatever I plan on doing tomorrow, I understand my life is in the hand of God. Now the next statement he makes here, but now ye glory in your vauntings, and all such glory is evil. Now you glory in your vauntings. The word glory there is not the normal word that you see, glory, like glorifying God and so forth. It's bragging. The word there means, now you're bragging. I'm ready to leave for Dallas tomorrow. Or I'm going to go to Singapore. And I'm going to be over there for a year. And I'm bragging. I'm bragging in my vauntings. That word vauntings means empty, braggart talk. It's an empty display of act, a swagger, empty assurance of what you're going to do. So you are bragging here in your swaggering way, is what it's saying. You have made up your mind. You are the Lord of your life. Here's what you are going to do. Now, I said, when you do that, then it is not good. Then he said, such glorying is evil. So if we have that attitude, we have an evil attitude. Rod, would you get me a glass of water while you're coming in, please? All right, the next verse, in verse 17, deals with what's called the sin of omission. And it says, to him, therefore, that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin. This scary verse. First of all, I want to call your attention to therefore. The therefore has a meaning, doesn't it? And it connects you to what we've just talked about. All right, now what we've just learned here in the last 15 minutes is we're not in control of our life. We're not in control of it. God is in control of it. And I better have a humble attitude and recognize that God is in control. Thank you very much. So I've just learned that. So I don't have this attitude, this bragging attitude. Shouldn't have that. I should depend upon God. If I don't, it's evil. If I do depend upon God, it's good. Now, therefore, to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it's evil. I know it's good to totally put my life in the hands of God and recognize he's in control. And if I don't do that, it's evil. See? It's sin. Now, on the other hand, this statement right here can be a very encompassing statement. To him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. That's kind of what is called an axiom. It's a truism. It's something that everybody understands. Woods, in his commentary, said this: every judgment parable, that is, every parable that talks about judging man in the New Testament, reveals that the punishment meted out was not for something bad the individual did, but something good he did not do. Note the parable of the talents here, I've got down. Now he said in every one of those parables, and I never really thought about this before, in every one of those parables that the Lord gives, talks about people that's going to be condemned, it was always concerning something they didn't do. That they didn't do. Not something that they did do, but something that they didn't do is the point he's making. Now, I haven't checked all those parables. I'm not sure that that is true personally, but that's what he says. And I've got down here about the parable of the talent. You remember the parable of the talent? The Lord went away and he left these three men with these talents, one 10 talent, one 5 talent, and one 1 talent. He came back and he condemned the guy with 1 talent. And he said, "Thou wicked servant." Now, what was it that servant did? Nothing. He didn't do anything. He just kept that amount of money, and the Lord said, you should have put it out to interest. But it's what he didn't do. See, what he didn't do. And that was what was wrong with that. Now, I might do a little bragging up here. You've probably heard my wife and other people talk about the fact that I'm not much of a cook. The only thing I can do is make peanut butter and crackers and well, I guess that's it. But now let me tell you that I am an excellent cook. In fact, I'm better than any of you women here tonight, I'll tell you that. And I'm far better than my wife. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I can prove it. I have never turned the oven up too high so I'd burn something. I've never left a pan on the stove so that something burned or cooked too long. See? I have never had a cake to fall on me where it falls down. I have never, now I could go on and on and on. I have never made a mistake in reading a recipe. Never. Not one mistake have I ever made. How impressed are you? Now, all you women, you've made those mistakes, haven't you? See why I'm better than you are?
Have you ever divided the recipe down and forced?
Okay, but what's wrong with me?
You've never done it.
See, that's what's wrong with me because I've never. I've never. And so that's the point we need to look at. If we know to do good and we do it not, it's those things that we don't do. Here. The Lord one time said, and that servant who knew his Lord's will and made not ready, nor did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. He said the one that didn't know and didn't will few stripes. But here it is, it's what he didn't do. Jesus said, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. So that's where the blessings is. If you know what you should do, to him that knoweth to do good, doeth it not, to him it is sin. And in Matthew 25, where you have the two groups, the sheep and the goats coming to the judgment bar, and when the people who are condemned, what are they condemned for? How does he state that out? He said, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire, which is prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you did not give me, and on down the line. So the sin of omission. So James says, keep this in mind. Whenever you know it's good to do something, you do it. And if you don't, to you then, it is sin. Okay, we move on in chapter 5. And in chapter 5, we're now going to talk some more about the rich. But it's going to be a certain kind of rich. Now, we've already talked about riches, and we've already determined whether it's right or wrong to be rich. Which is it? Neither one. It's neither right nor wrong to be rich. But which one has the most responsibility, I guess you would say, a poor man or a rich man? It's the one who has the most. You're going to have to give accountable for the most. And which one is going to be tempted the greatest to try to preserve their possessions? The person that doesn't have anything or the person that has everything? It's the person that has everything. And this is the reason Jesus said it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And we can't even do it unless we get that help from God. And so we've talked about those things that's there. Now, he's going to talk about the rich now. Now, here's an interesting thing as we look at this. I pointed out before we look at the verses in here. He says, come now, ye rich. So now he's going to talk about rich again in here. Weep and howl for your miseries, for they're coming upon you. Now he's really going to condemn these rich people. The rich are really going to be condemned. But I'm pointing out it's a certain kind of rich. And that's what he's going to deal with. And we'll look at it. It's a certain kind of a rich person. Now, here's what commentators will tell you. And I think it's right. They'll say it appears that what James is doing here is making some statements to the rich people who take advantage of the Christians. That is, he's not now talking to Christians who are rich and taking advantage of Christians because of the context, because of the way that he talks about it. It would be like if I were up here and I were preaching a sermon. And suppose I preached a sermon and telling all of you now look, here it is that you take your money, and I understand that you're poor and you're working hard, and a lot of times you're cheated out of your wages and you're just barely making it, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and people take advantage of you all the time, and in here. And then I say, now woe unto the rich. Now woe unto these rich. They're going to weep and they're going to howl. These people are going to suffer. Now, who am I preaching to right now? Well, I'm preaching to you, right? But who am I preaching about? About the rich that are out here taking advantage of you. That's what I think we're going to see that James is doing. He's going to be making these comments about these poor people who are under persecution. And he's telling these people under persecution how to live. But as he's doing it, he's going to be talking about all these rich people doing this. So now, he said, your riches are corrupted, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and your silver are rusted, and their rust shall be a testimony against you, and shall eat your flesh as fire. You have laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who mowed your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth out. And the cries of them that reaped have entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. In other words, here it is, these rich people who cheated these other people out of their money and so forth. And so he goes on, and you have lived delicately on the earth and taken your pleasures, and you have nourished your heart in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed the righteous one, and he doth not resist you. So I think what he's saying, he's obviously preaching to Christians, but he's doing what I said a minute ago. Preaching, and then he's turning and telling the wicked people what's going to happen. And when he's telling the wicked people what's going to happen, do the Christians get the message? See? They're going to get the message. Now look at what these rich people right here really are. He's going to tell them that your metals that you've got in here, your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth-eaten. Now the word corrupted means rotted, is really what it means. I'm going to give these definitions pretty quickly because it's pretty self-evident what he's talking about. Moth-eaten comes from two words. The first word is moth and the second is to eat. So your riches are moth-eaten. Now those people, as you got riches, you can have lots of corn like Steve has, owning that big farm back in Illinois. And he can take all this corn, he can store it up, and he's going to save this corn so he has hundreds of millions of bushels of corn. Not going to use it to help anybody or anything. He's going to have hundreds of millions of bushels. What's going to happen to that corn? It's going to rot, isn't it? See, it's going to rot. Somebody else said, I'm not putting my money in corn. I'm going to put my money in fabrics, oriental rugs, in real precious things. What's going to happen? Somewhere along the line, they're going to be moth-eaten. This is what he's saying. Whatever you've got. So I'm going to put it in metals. I'm going to take my gold and silver and going to put it in metals. The word rusted there really means decayed all the way through to the bottom. That's going to decay. Now, some metals decay or rust much more slowly than others. Some, like gold, you don't even call it rust. What do you call it? Oliver, you got so much gold you ought to know. It oxidizes, yeah. When that gold oxidizes, Oliver's got some gold out there. He leaves it out there for 15 years. He goes back and picks it up, and it's what, green?
No, it's brown.
Okay, it's brown. So he looks at it's brown. What does he knows happened to that chunk of gold? It's oxidized. Now, if you rub that off, if you rub that oxidation off, do you have as much gold as you used to have? No. That's what that oxidation is. It's working on that, and it's decaying it. See, what we would say decaying it. So I don't care what you got, whether you've got gold or fabrics or food or whatever it is. And it's going to be a testimony against you. And it's going to testify to your improper use of selfishness. And you say, oh, no, Lord, I didn't just hoard it up for myself. Well, what's all that rust doing out there? See, why is all of this out there? It'll be a testimony against you, is what he's saying. In other words, you can't fool the Lord. And it'll eat your flesh. The only thing I know that could be is that you're going to hoard up all your riches, not use it in a good sense, and it's going to condemn you to hell. Matthew 10:28 says that we're to fear. Don't fear people who can't send your spirit to hell, but fear him who can send both body and spirit, see, to hell. That is there. Now then, he said, all of this is laid up for you. You have laid up your treasure in the last days. So what is the treasure now? Here it is, I've laid up my corn and my gold and my oriental rugs, and I have all of these possessions, and I'm living this great life, and they're mine, and I'm hoarding them up. What am I laying it up for? What am I laying it up for? Well, I could say I'm laying it up in case I lose my job. I need enough to live on for about 3 or 4 or 5 months till I can get another job. Is that what this guy's laying it up for? No, this is all that excessive hoarding here that we're talking about. And so it's storing it up. Okay, it's storing it up for what? It's storing it up for what? We're storing it up for the last days that are in here. Okay, what's it going to be? Well, here's what's going to be. You're going to stand before God, and you're going to give an answer to how you used it. And that's going to be the treasure. Now, you've got a treasure that you're going to give him. You remember Jesus back in the Sermon on the Mount where he says, now, there's 2 kinds of treasures that you can have, and one of them the moths eat, and so put your treasures where? Store up your treasures in heaven. Store them up there. Make sure that as the Lord looks at us, he sees our life is a kind of life that will be a testimony that, yeah, we are a certain kind of a person that's here. Now he said in here, woe unto you who have kept back the wages of those who mowed your field by fraud. And they cry out unto the Lord of the Sabbath. Okay, first of all, kept back by fraud. That word means not paying the honest wage they deserve. You hire somebody, that person comes and he does the work for you, and then you cheat him out of his wages. You hold it back, you keep it. That's how you make your wealth. You can really get wealthy by not paying people for jobs that they do for you. So that's what you have done. You've held it back. Now he said, here's what will happen. Those wages will cry out unto the Lord of Sabaoth. Now, not Sabbath, not the Sabbath. Sabbath means the Sabbath day, rest. This word means the host. And the host means many. The Lord of the magnificent greatness, the minis. The Lord of the universe. The Lord of all the heavens. That great Lord of all things, those wages will cry out unto his ears. Obviously, this is figurative language. You remember in Hebrew letter, what does it say about Abel's blood? That it crieth out unto God. And there, so it'll cry. Yeah, in other words, you can't hide your ungodly ways in your material world, is what he's saying. There's just no way to hide it. But you've lived delicately and in pleasure all your life. You remember the guy in Luke 12 where Jesus shows that your life doesn't consist of the things which you possess. And then he said, it's like the guy that had a barn, then he went out and he had these crops and they just overflowed and he tore down the barn, he built bigger barns. He's keeping the whole thing for himself in there. And then he asked him, now, your life is going to be taken tonight. Whose will these things be? And so these people, these rich, where I say a certain kind of rich, these are your hoarders. These are your ones that will cheat to make their profits. These are the ones that only live for their own delicate life, just their pleasures. That's what they're living for, not to help anybody else. And these are the people who've killed the righteous one. Now, this word, kind of interesting. Who's killed the righteous one. The word righteous means just. See, that's what it means. Now, there's two thoughts on this. I'm going to give you both of them, tell you which one I think it's talking about. But in the context, lots of people think he's talking about the righteous saints who have been cheated. So these are the kind of people who kill the righteous saints who have been cheated. Now, in the context, that could be true. But there's something else here that we look at in this that makes me think it's talking about Christ. Now, I'll bet when we read this, that's who you thought about, isn't it? Who killed the righteous one, that you thought about Christ? And I think that's what it's talking about. Look at other places in the New Testament. Acts 13:14. But you denied the holy and righteous one. There's the same term, talking about Christ. Which of the prophets did not your fathers persecute? And they killed them that showed before the coming of the righteous one. That's Christ. And he said, the God of our fathers hath appointed thee to know his will and to see the righteous one. That's Christ. 1 John. If any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous, or the righteous one. This term is used quite frequently there to refer to Jesus Christ. See? And then there's a couple verses that we've got in here that will kind of show us, I think that's what he's talking about here. He says, now you have condemned, you condemned and you have killed the righteous one, and he doth not resist you. Now the righteous one that we're talking about is somebody that didn't resist you. Now when they killed Christ, did Christ resist them? See? And so that is made very clear in 1 Peter, see chapter 2 and verse 23. When he was reviled, he reviled not again. In Acts 8, he was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb before his shearer is dumb. That is, didn't complain, didn't yell, cry out, and threaten. So he opened not his mouth. So it seems to me like here in verse 6, this righteous one is one that didn't complain, didn't do anything of this nature, and it would be talking about the Christ. So now, there's a statement up here in verse 5 that I want to make, because it's kind of a statement that I guess a farm boy would know a little bit more than somebody else. You have lived delicately on the earth and taken your pleasures. We all understand what that means. You have nourished your heart in the day of slaughter. You have nourished your heart in the day of slaughter. Now, back on the farm, we would kill a pig every October or November when the frost came, when there came a good hard frost. So we'd raise these pigs, raise them during the summer. Then you get down here, about the last 30, 45, maybe 60 days, all of a sudden you start pouring corn to them. You just give them all the food that they want. What happens to a pig when you do that? Or a cow? Either one. Man, they're living high on the hog. They are gobbling all of that up. So you give it to them every day. But what's happening to them? Every bite of food, everything that they grab and put in there, what's the purpose of that? It's for the day of slaughter. So finally, my dad would go out and say, okay, that pig is ready to be killed. See? Because it's eaten enough corn. You ever heard of grain-fed beef? Same thing. Grain-fed beef is where farmers have these, get calves and raise them and then sell them over here. Finally, one day, they'll take them to a grain, I don't know what you'd call it. You see them, there's one big one between here and going over I-90 that's over there somewhere. That's off on the right-hand side of the road, and hundreds and thousands of cows out there. They're all out there. What's that? A feedlot, right. That's what it is. Take them over to the feedlot. There are hundreds and sometimes there's thousands. And what are they all doing? Whenever you drive by, it doesn't make any difference. What are they all doing? They're out there over that trough. They're eating. They're eating. What are they feeding? They're nourishing themselves up for the day of slaughter. That's what we do when we live for ourselves. We live, and here it is. I'm grabbing it all for me, and I'm not sharing it. I'm not using it properly, and I just using it here. I'm doing all of this and fattening myself up for the day of slaughter. So he deals with this then to show us there the way we should have, the attitude we should have then toward these things. Yeah.
In my text, the New American Standard, each of the verses you quote up there have righteous when capitalized, which would mean deity. This particular verse doesn't. So are you suggesting that's a bad translation then?
No. Okay, everybody hear the question because it's a good question and we're going to learn a little Greek. In all these others up here, you see where it has righteous one, it has it capitalized. But here in James, it doesn't have it capitalized, have a little r. Now, in the Greek, there are no capital letters. Now, Greek does have capital letters. If you look it up, it has capital letters. But as they wrote the New Testament, as they wrote their documents, they wouldn't capitalize the first sentence, or they wouldn't capitalize names of cities or anything like this. They didn't use capitals the way we do them. There are sometimes they would make a manuscript and they'd make it all capitals. Right? But they didn't write with capital letters and small letters. So they didn't capitalize the word God in your New Testament. The word God is never capitalized. It's just a little g and right on. Now, when the translators, when they think that it's talking about deity, they'll capitalize it. And when they think it's not talking about deity, they don't capitalize it. Another way to use it, you'll see many times in your New Testament, where the word spirit is capitalized, and one translation will have it capitalized and another one won't. Well, there's nothing wrong with translation except the translators are trying to tell you, we, the ones who translated this version, we think this is talking about the Holy Spirit. So they'll capitalize it. The other one says, no, I think it's talking about man's spirit, so they don't capitalize it. So what this tells you is, in the American Standard Version, these people in the book of James, they don't think it's talking about Christ. They think it's talking about what I mentioned first of all. See, it's there. Do any of you have any versions where it is capitalized? And that's there. Okay. But do you see the point on that? Okay. Well, that's where the clock says we quit tonight then.
So in the translator's understanding of this, they're talking about that the rich, that in fact they've not only done all these things, but they've also got the courts to condemn and put to death people people who didn't, or in this case it says murder, put to death, or present murder in righteous man who does not resist you. So, meaning that a Christian would just accept that determination, in fact, be murdered.
Right.
And that's part of what's going on with these Christian brethren.
Right. That's what that tells you, that they,
Not-
that the translators thought that that was what it was talking about. Yeah. Okay, any other question? Okay, if not, class dismissed.